A child not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. This old proverb can be seen with the assassination group from the former members at the Alkmaar orphanage, an experiment to train orphans into trained assassins. This organization was led by Seiya, who is, in my opinion, the overarching agonist of Sakamoto days. With all that explained, let's go into the first member, Kumanomi. Kumanomi is one of the prominent members of X's organization. She's shown to be a commanding person, acting as the big sister of Uzuki's group, but is very caring and loyal to her group, especially Gaku. After seeing him gravely injured, she crashes out and sends a nail gun at Shishiba and Shin, and moves so fast that Shin doesn't even realize that she went past him. And after he gets his ear cut off, he hunts down the person who did this and ends up killing one of the order members. And it should be mentioned, however, that while she did assassinate him, he was protecting Heisuke and was defending civilians. And the fight would probably have been different if Heisuke and the civilians were not there. This is not downplaying her, but this is just something that needs to be mentioned. Then we'll go into her powers and abilities. Her most prominent ability is magnetic control, which she uses to control with these special magnetic gloves that she can manipulate iron, steel, and other metals, which allows for these crazy advantages in urban environments. She can create projectile weapons like coil guns and launch nails at high speeds. She also can use iron sand to block bullets and create projectiles to blind her opponents. She has been shown to be very resourceful with her powers, modifying her armor, samurai armor, and other metals that she can find. Her combat style is a close-range brawling that also encompasses mid-range magnetic enhanced attacks, and she is shown to be incredibly durable, especially during her fight with Hyo from the Order. And her endurance, even after getting her hand cut off from Hyo, she still continues to fight. She possesses a metal arm that she uses for her magnetic attacks, and she has fought multiple Order members, being Shishiba and Hyu, and holding her own in both fights. Her metal arm is actually really good because anytime it gets injured, she just needs more metal, and then she has her arm back. But it also has the downside, which we saw with her fight against the Carolina Reaper, which when the Carolina Reaper heated up the temperature so high, she lost her magnetism powers, allowing her to not fight at 100%, and honestly becoming pretty much useless without him, as she seems to really rely on her magnetic powers. Speaking of Carolina Reaper, we'll go on to the next character, right? Carolina Reaper is not from the orphanage, from what I've seen in Sakamoto days. He's the alleged older brother of Club Jam, and is actually a pretty sick guy, as he does not care at all about putting the bombs inside of Mafuyu, or whether or not he'd be useful at all. And he was more so worried about would the bomb reach the Order, and he wants to get revenge on Shin for cutting Club Jam's arms off. He is full of revenge for his brother, and his vengeance clouds a lot of his judgment in his fights. He does not seem to really be that close to the members of X, as we see him get called a pervert by Kumanomi, and him calling her a loser back. He fights with Shin and Amane, revealing that he has severe burns on his bandaged face, and I'm not sure how he's able to see with that. Going into his powers and abilities. He was extremely quick to dodge a strike from Kanaguri, and could spit and breathe fire, the drawback being that he would burn his mouth sometimes and he needed to drink water. He's powerful enough to fight Shin and Amane at once, even though Shin was struggling as he did not have his ESP at this moment. He does get slashed multiple times by Amane and creates a ring of fire with his flames, proving multiple times to be faster than Amane and having multiple uses for his flames. He also has these gases actually in his body, which is how he's able to use a move called Gas Saber, by using acetylene and pure oxygen from his mouth into a blade that severs and cauterizes simultaneously, and it's said that this is able to cut through even steel. He's then able to cut through Amane's staff with his Gas Saber. However, he ends up being outsmarted by Amane, who gets him to heat up the area, because while he's fighting with Kumanomi, the magnets are susceptible to heat and losing magnetism the hotter that they get, and all magnetism is lost once the temperature goes above the Curie point, showing that Amane is a very competent fighter and was able to outsmart him. After this, he's able to get a hit on Shishiba with his Gas Saber, who was protecting a shocked Amane, simultaneously getting hit with a hammer to the head by Shishiba, who is an Order member. And he keeps on fighting and threatens Amane, but later falls into a hole created by Osaragi and is assassinated, ending the fight there. Okay, now we're going to get into Kei Uzuki. So he probably will need his own video, but I'll just give an explanation of his character, right? He is the leader of the X organization. He also goes by Slur, crazy name, but he started off as a former assassin in the JCC and was a friend of Nagabo, Akao, and Sakamoto. He eventually went on the run with a cow. This is the older sister, and ended up killing her after he was tricked into killing her by his older brother Asaki, who also was the man who ran the orphanage. And after not being able to deal with her death, he created a split personality of a cow in his head after killing her. He then goes on a mission to topple the JAA and replace it, take it over, and kill his brother who caused him all this pain previously. However, when he is invading them, he is stabbed by Nagumo and reverts to the Akao personality. And because basically whatever happens, whenever he's exposed to extreme psychological stress, he creates another personality as a self-preservation technique. So while he is fighting with the JAA, he encounters Takamura, who is the strongest character in the Sakamoto Days series. I would say that fairly confidently right now. And after almost being killed by him and witnessing his friend Hamura die, he gets the split personality of Takamura, gaining his abilities. However, he's not able to control Takamura's abilities at all. So to explain that, there are 3 current personalities inside of Kei. You have Kei, which is the original personality. Takamura, who is the strength of the JAA essentially. And the last one is a cow, Kei being the original. And all these are figments of his memory, Kei being the actual one, and Takamura and a cow being figments of his memory. They aren't actually people, but just how he has perceived them. That's why he can't control Takamura, because he only sees him as an out-of-control killing machine. And he only knows about a cow's memories from what a cow has told him. He also recruited Mafuyu and Toramaru specifically to use them as weapons to attack the Order, and implanted a bomb in them. So he's very uncouth and he's a very twisted individual, using children as literal weapons to kill the Order. So Kai's strongest ability is, as I was saying earlier, his extreme psychological pressure increases his self-preservation, and he can take the persona of someone else and use it against them. This is how he was able to defeat Takamura. Because in the 3-way fight, we see his intelligence come up. Well, this is actually a cow's intelligence, right? Because in the 3-way fight, we see a cow come up with a plan in the heat of the moment fighting Takamura to understand that his bloodlust can be beaten by going to immobilize instead of killing him, right? And in this fight, a cow is saved by Hamura, who pushes it out of the way, and Hamura then gets speed blitzed and pretty much saving Uzuki's life there. And this is what caused them to tweak out and create the Takamura personality. Because there's literally a quote stating that the only person who could ever beat Takamura in this series is Takamura. And even from this point, he does have this, he goes to use Takamura to attack a JAA base, but it's clear that he will attack anyone around him. He cannot be controlled until a cow was powerful enough to get him, basically catch it lacking, and bring herself back to the one in control. Now to Kanaguri. Kanaguri is not from the orphanage. He's a tall man with this clean drip and a clean fade, and he constantly wears this film around his neck and is always seen carrying a camera. He was a former member of the Order who was an undercover member of X. He was renowned for his assassin movies and is the founder of murder films within Sakamoto Days. He became an Order member by killing his good friend who was a former Order member. And after revealing that he was working with X's organization, he left the Order and currently follows Akao's younger sister, Akira Akao, around to see her as the heroine of her story after figuring out what happened and wanting to make a new movie out of it and being inspired. So going over his powers and abilities. So being a former Order member, he's very talented in filmmaking. Not really killing. This is basically the delusional character of Sakamoto Days, after Kei Uzuki, right? Believing the universe is one giant movie set and that everyone is the actors. His filmmaking abilities allow him to fight on par with Sakamoto, and his speed is crazy, as he was fighting with him and landing nearly fatal hits on one of the teachers at the JCC. Even going to land some blows on Sakamoto as well, too, and throwing an iPhone shattering his glasses. His durability is even crazy, as he was unfazed after a knife was thrown into his eye because he was so focused on recording. He uses a clapperboard, which is like that thing that they use for like the action from movie scenes, to lop people's heads off. So he's very delusional, but also very powerful. There's another character named Gozu, but we don't know anything about him. So Tenkyu. Tenkyu has gotten a lot more screen time or attention in the most recent chapters with his fight versus Shin, and he is from the orphanage and uses a bow in his fights. Tenkyu is considered to be the only success, as he has no emotions and doesn't understand human interactions fully. He was attempting to kill Sakamoto's wife and his daughter to make Kei no longer upset at him. And he was looking for the fortune teller, hoping to get an answer on how to get X no longer be upset and no longer willing, and he was willing to stop killing if that would mean X would not be upset at him anymore. He is shown to be pretty dim and not that intelligent, but he also has incredibly good battle IQ, able to deduct that Shin can read minds and able to figure out how his powers work. And he also is able to quickly understand in the moment that Shin has lied to him and that he can go back to killing. Now, his powers and abilities: he has frightening strength, able to use his bow with a frightening accuracy, and we see him straight blow through a man with one of his arrows and with his bow. He has the crazy strength to be able to create craters in the ground just by beating his bow into the ground, and he then smashed Shin through pillars into the JAA's lowest floors. His left eye is seen to be extremely proficient, and it greatly improves his accuracy whenever he is shooting. He uses a compound bow, and the strings on the compound bow are so sharp that he can slice human heads off with them. Now we're going to Kashima. Kashima is not from the orphanage. He wears a deer mask and has a patch-like body, much similar to Mahito from JJK, but nowhere near as strong as him. He starts out as a villain working for Slur, but is later changed to be on Team Sakamoto after realizing that there is another way from him. And his body is pretty much completely, or 70% of it, is replaced with technology. It's been modified, so he's a cyborg. So he gets transformed by Hana Sakamoto one day into a fridge after being captured by Sakamoto, and he has Wi-Fi and cotton candy. He seems to be more kind-hearted than he lets on by helping resuscitate who he thinks is Nagumo, or one of his would-be enemies, even though he later realized that it was Gaku. He still seems to be a person who cares a lot about life, because he killed an injured cockroach and wept for his subordinates after being killed, and is one of the more delusional people in this series as well too. And this is because he has this form of justice and believes that by understanding, and he believes he's misunderstood by eliminating the bad people, despite them not really doing any crazy crimes. Like, it was explained how some people from his past committed some crimes, and he eliminated them when they weren't things that would deserve to be eliminated. He also does not show his face until he trusts someone, and he has his own moral compass that he chooses to follow in the series. His powers and abilities. So he has basically the latest technology implemented in him because he's very interested in newer technology, which is one of the reasons why he was at the lab. Meaning that he has also really good healing technology within him. This is how he was able to reattach Gaku's severed arms and his fingers to be fully functional. He wasn't able to reattach his ear though. He's had lots of body modifications which he uses to fight, and as I said earlier, 70% of his body has been modified. He has stitches in parts of his body where weapons are protruding, and some examples of his weapons that he uses are laser guns, long knives, wires, and bombs. Now we'll be discussing Club Jam. So Club Jam is a very twisted and masochistic individual, suggesting that Kanaguri brutally tortures him because he enjoys being tortured. He likes to hold his breath until he goes unconscious and hypnotizes people to step on him and whip him. Yeah, he's into that stuff. And he has very little fear and is seen as playful during a lot of his fights. He's very close with the Carolina Reaper, refers to him as a brother. He has a very playful personality and is intelligent enough to realize that the database wouldn't be able to be on an SD card and that they were going to trick him. He's also a very brutal individual, and he's pretty ruthless because he would go and break Saba's fingers after realizing that he was being tricked. He's a powerful fighter that uses hypnosis to enslave his targets. His hypnosis is so powerful that he hypnotized a large group of JCC students to find and destroy the database. These hallucinations are so powerful that only people who are stronger, like Sakamoto, will be able to resist them. Strong impacts could break this hypnosis, and he was defeated, and his arms were cut off after being tricked by his own hypnosis. He was shown to be quick enough to break Saba's fingers and snatch the SD card from him, and he uses a bladed chain which are connected to a ring on his finger, and it's also strong enough to hold his weight. And then we'll go on to Haruma. Haruma is from the orphanage and grew up with X. So Haruma is a tall young man with slicked back blonde hair, with a painting of a pink swirl on his face and depressed black eyes. He always carries around a brown waist that has 4 holders for his balls, and he has accepted that the assassin's life is all there is for him and that he will not be able to be a normal person. He's a friendly, laid-back, and relaxed guy, often being polite and caring even for his enemies, like the JAA executive that he offered a sports drink to calm down in Shin during their battle, choosing to fight in a way that makes it fair for other people around him. He believes himself to be so good at fighting that he restricts himself with sports rules, as we see with football, volleyball, and other sports that he plays. He doesn't particularly enjoy the one-sided fights, so he uses those restrictions, especially in his fight with Shin, to make it more interesting for both of them. To admit that for most of this fight, Shin did not have his ESP. So that is one of the things to consider when looking at his fight. And while he uses this killing sportsmanship, this does, at some points of the fight, prevent the fight from just ending, as he doesn't just wipe out Shin since he's still following the rules, such as the staying behind the line whenever he serves in volleyball. And also, the line of him asking Shin where he grew up with and saying that he looks familiar is where there's some speculation that Shin has some ties to X and the orphanage, which is a fairly popular theory, which I believe some of it as well too, I'm not gonna lie. Now to get into his powers and abilities. So his style of fighting revolves around ball games such as soccer or handball. It should be mentioned that any round-shaped object that he can really use as a ball. And Shin was barely able to catch his penalty kick even with his enhanced gloves to protect some civilians. He's utilized track and field in a lot of his fights, as one time he was able to throw a javelin at at Shin and Sakamoto, with Shin catching it and breaking it. As of now, he's used volleyball, bowling, soccer, American football, handball, discus, and javelin throwing. All of these with his beliefs about killing and with his sports fighting style. One of his shots with shot put was shown to blow through a wall and simultaneously go through a man's torso. He's also shown to have some pretty good battle IQ, understanding Shin's capability with the gloves and how much charge he would have left with the power that the gloves were providing. He's also extremely powerful, with Shishiba comparing him to a leopard and be able to easily defeat multiple opponents and throw an iron shot put ball in the air and being able to break under the iron chains quite easily if they had restricted him. Even according to Shishiba, his strength is comparable to Hio from the Order, who is believed to be one of the physically strongest Order members. We see this when he, American football style, tackles Shin, destroying the foundation that they're standing on and sending him through the floor. His durability is also fairly impressive because he would take minigun shots directly to the head and his upper body without taking much or any injury. He also took a punch from Shin, who was using his special gauntlets. Even after while fighting Shin when they were doing a sumo match, his eardrums were blown out and he was still capable of fighting and walking, showing pretty insane durability, not just externally but internally. He would lose to Shin by Shin on Spartan Camp with an ice ball from Siba, and his ESP coming back with Shin developing a new ability to just stop people in their tracks, and he ends up surviving the fight, but loses the sumo game because Shin saved his life by throwing him into an area with no weapons so he wouldn't die. He later walks off and he seemingly dies from the last punch that Shin threw. But later he returns in the fight against Takamura, helping fight with the balls, and after fighting with Gaku versus Takamura and a cow, he later gets sliced in half, saving a cow's life. Speaking of Gaku, let's head on to Gaku next. So Gaku is from the orphanage. He is shown to be a laid-back, lazy, but fairly straightforward individual. When fighting Mafuyu and the girl, I already forgot her name, not gonna lie. While playing a video game, he's even able to throw them through a wall, telling them they will be useless if they can only go on like this. He proves his ability to lock in by seeing things as a game in his fight with Nagumo, right? Because he gets stronger, basically, whenever he views the world as a game, another delusional character. And when him and Nagumo meet, they both pretend to leave, and then immediately when they leave, they come back and turn back to go fight each other, proving that neither one of them is afraid of a difficult fight. Now heading on to their powers and abilities. Gaku is a very powerful man, and he wields a mace that he can move around with expert dexterity, cutting through multiple men with one quick swing before they can react, then hitting the man with a 1-inch punch, knocking his head off. He also fought against Takamura, getting his arm cut off so cleanly the muscle tissue was still alive. He is shown to fight against Nagumo to proclaim that he has more power than him, but that their speed is even, but remarking that as the fight goes on, Nagumo is a tricky fighter and that he will get more powerful. He's able to quickly adapt to his changing weapons, but does get caught off guard every now and then in the fight. Nagumo is an Order level threat, and probably one of the stronger members of the Order. So the fact that Gaku is able to block some attacks from his changing weapons and return a 1-inch punch on him is fairly impressive. He ends up losing later in the fight due to getting caught off guard by a literal invisible blade. even Nagumo admitted that he would not win directly in a fist fight. However, that is how Nagumo fights, right? That's just how it is. He doesn't fight fair. He's an assassin, not a brawler. And when he realizes that there's a time limit, Gaku fights even faster in combat, very quickly moving in the fight, with Gaku's ability being even more incredibly impressive, taking hits from Nagumo and getting sent flying from the hits he takes, even taking a blade to his arm as an opportunity to get a hit in. He would later end up losing to Nagumo, but ends up surviving with help from Kashima and Sakamoto. And later in his fight against Takamura, he even almost ends up dying, but while he's about to be struck by Takamura, he grabs the blade in his mouth and uses that blade to slash Takamura in that fight. So he's very durable. So that's all the characters that I want to discuss. Thank you guys for watching this. This was actually really fun to make. I feel like all the X characters are really interesting, and I'm really interested to see where they go next in the future for this fight. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. See ya.